Jeremiah, Prophet Amos, Jesus himself, the Jewish people, right?
Right.
They were in the desert for 40 years. By the way, 40 is not a precise number. If you go back to Hebrew, it means Harbe Shanim. When it was translation, Harbe is nearby Arba, they translated to 40. So it means many years in the desert. Alright? There are so many, sorry to tell you, don't take it personal. The Bibles you have in English are not very, very, very strong translation. Because it was translated in these new Bibles. I'm not against them, like they were translated in the Western mentality. So you have to go back to the source, which is Hebrew. Remember we learned the numbers the first day?
Yes.
I'm going to tell you now why we learned the numbers, to understand, to hear the Hebrew, to understand it. And any question you're going to ask me through this trip, I'm going to tell you one answer. Any question from the Bible you think about, one answer have Hebrew. Start to think Hebrew, you're going to understand more the scripture. Because the scripture was written in the Middle Eastern Jewish mentality. And if you understand this Jewish mentality, you can understand more the rabbi. I'm going to give you an example what I mean by that. If Jesus was Chinese, I'm going to go and study the Chinese culture to understand these things. Because I'm in love with this rabbi, I want to know him better.
Yeah.
I'm in love with my wife, I want to know her better. I understand her language and get to know her more. You see what I mean? So many people pass through the desert. We know it's an important stage, the desert. Listen for this. The desert, look around you. It's so tough. It's so hard. Look, you cannot survive outside the desert. It's valleys, ups and downs. It's hard, tough life. You're going to see soon some Bedouins. They know how to survive. You know why? They know where are the sources of water. No wonder why Jesus said, I am the living water. Now when you come to this part of the world, you understand water. Because without water here, you will never survive. Now the desert is like my life and your life. We are the desert. But if we dig inside deeply in our hearts, we're going to find abundance of water. Do you know if you dig deeply below the desert, you're going to find water and abundance of water. Because when it rains in Jerusalem, it's up high. All the water will come underground all the way down to the Dead Sea. Now, sometimes, I'm talking about myself, sometimes I try to build my own cistern. I chisel it, quarry it, plaster it, and put water inside it, and think that I'm gonna survive. Sometimes your cistern is sometimes your job, your car, something you depend on. But you know what? In hot sunny days, these cisterns, the water will finish because there's not much rain. And if there are some years there is no rain, this cistern will not be filled again. I will depend on it. But do you know that the springs around have fresh water 365 days a year and cold water? So if you are in the middle of the desert in your life and whenever you say there is no hope and it's all finished and you're broken, if you cry out to Jesus that second, He's going to direct you to the fresh water. There's always abundance of water even if you're in the middle of the desert. I have good news. It's okay to be in the desert. But the key, don't stay a long time in the desert. You have to run away from it. Now, I have another good news for you. After the desert, there is graduation.
Yeah.
You know Jesus?
Yeah.
After the desert, he went to the cross, and he said the word. The Jewish people, they were 40 years in the desert, and they entered the promised land. I was in the desert in my life so many times, but the desert will build you and make you a real man of God. Most of the prophets and the people that God used were in the desert. Prophet Elijah, he ran away from Jezebel, right? And he was in the desert. But God used him so much. Now look to the left, you see the Bedouins here, or the tents. They are like the Amish. Did you see the Amish group this morning?
Yeah.
You could say that these people are like the Amish, but originally, biblically, this is how Abraham and Sarah lived. They formed tents, and they moved from one place to another. Now look at the top. Do you see like a fortress on the top? Like a castle, very ancient. This is the Good Samaritan Inn. Now I will try to explain for you this parable in the Middle Eastern eyes, through Jesus' eyes, first century way of thinking. Probably you heard many interpretations and many preaching about this parable, but this time it will be so different. Luke chapter 10, verses 30 to 47. Luke chapter 10. Of the Good Samaritan. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. This is retranslation, so to tell you. I'm going to disappoint you for a while, but if you go back to the Hebrew, it says a certain man. The Van Dyke translation, if you have King James, says a certain man. I have the NIV, but it's okay. A certain man. When it says a certain man, which means we don't know the background of this man. Alright, in Hebrew. Now there's a point. One of the disciples asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? And always Jesus answered in parables. I mentioned why he answered in parables, remember? Because he wants them to learn the story, to remember the story. So a certain man, we don't know his background. We don't know if he's Jewish. We don't know if he is a Gentile, a Roman, or a Samaritan. Was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. The Hebrew, it does not give you precisely from Jerusalem to Jericho or Jericho to Jerusalem. But when they translate it in English, they said down from Jerusalem to Jericho. Alright? It could be either way. Now, the paragraph before it in the Bible speaks about Jericho, and the paragraph after it in the Bible speaks about Jerusalem. This means, when Jesus said this parable, he was walking from Jerusalem, from Jericho up to Jerusalem. If you go, you could check it later, see the paragraph before it and see the paragraph after it. He fell into the hands of robbers, also weak translation. These are zealots. You know who are the zealots? Remember Jesus on the cross? There were two people to the right and the side. The Bible says thieves. Weak translation. These are zealots who are against the Roman government. These are the Jewish terrorists of the first century. Alright? Don't worry, there are Muslim terrorists, there are Jewish terrorists, and there are Christian terrorists, alright? So, these are the first century Jewish terrorists that, you know what's number one in the agenda of the zealots? Number one? Guess what? kill all the high priests in the temple.
Wow.
That is agenda number one. You know why? They were so corrupt. Remember, Jesus so many times went to the temple and put up all the tables in the temple? It's mentioned once in the Bible. I tell you, he'd done it every time he was in Jerusalem. So he fell among thieves. Now, this man, which we don't know his background, is very foolish. He's very dumb. You know why? If you fell among thieves in the Middle East, you give them what they want. Don't argue with them. We know that he argued with them. How come he argued with them? We know they attacked him and robbed him out of his clothes. Let me continue. When he fell into the hands of the robbers, they stripped him of clothes, beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. So he's more stupid. You know why he's more stupid? No one wandered on this road by himself. Of course he's asking for trouble. Do you know this road is dangerous until today at night? From the Bedouins and the people around. So you never travel in the first century. Until the 19th, 20th century, you never travel here by yourself. You travel with caravans, a group of men at the beginning, then in the middle a group of women, and in the back group of men. To protect. Alright? This is the sea level under the water. Close the windows, please. Alright, you're gonna feel your ears much more like
Popping.
here it will pop up a little bit because we're going lower and lower under the sea level, being nearby the lowest point on earth, just to tell you, 400 meters below sea level. Which sea level? It's Mediterranean sea level. Alright, it's worldwide, Mediterranean sea level. So he fell among thieves, wrapped him out of his clothes. Why Jesus says wrapped out of his clothes? Do you know? Because of the way they dress. In the first century we could know his background. From the way people dress, I could tell you today what village they belong to. So there is a reason. If you don't understand the culture, context, you will not understand why they wrapped him out of his clothes. Because Jesus does not want us to know his background. He was left half dead. If you go back to Hebrew, it means unconscious. What does it mean? He can't talk. When someone will talk, I could know his background. I could know from his language. Is he Jewish or is he from the Romans or anything? So we don't know the background. So the bottom line, Jesus is giving this parable to say, the bottom line of it, any person in need is your friend. When one of the disciples is asking, who's my friend? The bottom line answer, you see, you could answer it in the Western way in one sentence. Any person in need is your friend. But Jesus said a parable to make this point. So any person in need, we have to help Christians. You know that this parable had so much effect in the Roman Empire because every religion, mostly in the world, they help their own race. But Christianity, we help anyone in need. This is the source of it. Okay? So this is only a taste of the Good Samaritan parable. A Levite passed by, a priest passed by. Now, if you read it from the first time, you think this parable is anti-Jewish. Why? Because the high priest is passing by, and Jericho is a high priest village. Why the high priest did not help? You think this parable is like, what's going on? But if you don't understand that this high priest was waiting for 1 full year to have a ceremonial in the temple, in the Holy of Holies, if he touches that person, he will lose his turn. So you have a good excuse. The Dead Sea, you're going to see part of it, look to the right. This is the lowest point on earth, the Dead Sea. I tell you, I need 2 months with you in this country.
Yes, please.
So this will open your appetite to come. Yes. So we're going to go to Jericho. Look to the left, Jericho.
Jericho.
Of course, the Levites will do the same thing. I will end with this parable because I could stay like 10 days, 10 hours speaking about it. The Levite passed by. He done the same like this priest. And who passed by is Samaritan. Now, Samaritan is like a Palestinian today. Everyone hates the Palestinians. So whenever I go to the airport, man, they give me 4 hours. When I reach the States, they give me another 4 hours. Check. They think I'm one of the terrorists. But now I love it because I tell about Jesus, so they get rid away from me so quick. Anyway, because you do it so many times, you get used to it, you know, you get better for it. So I want to make the point, everyone hates the Samaritans. They are like bad people. The least expected to help has helped. This is Jesus. This is his kingdom. And he had compassion on him. And took him to an inn, paid his price, and he said, until I come back. He remembers Jesus, alright? You know this part. So, I will end with this, and we are entering Jericho. Now there are 3 Jerichos to tell you. There is New Jericho, what we see today. There is New Testament Jericho, which is Herod's Jericho. And there is Old Testament Jericho, Joshua. I'm going to show you part of that. Alright? This is the oldest city in the world from the Neolithic period. I am saying 7000 BC.
Oh my God.
Which means 9,000 years from today. We are crossing the Great African Rift Valley. It's 4,700 kilometers long. Look to the right, this is the valley. We're gonna cross a good portion of it. Alright? Why did Jericho exist so long? What do you think? I gave you a hint earlier. Springs. There are 3 big springs in Jericho. Remind me stories of Jericho. Let's start with the Old Testament. Remind me some stories in the Old Testament. Tony told me that you are very good at the Bible. You know so many things. Old Testament Jericho. Joshua, remember? Joshua ben Nun went around the walls of the city and the walls fell down. This is Old Testament Jericho. Remember Rahab, the harlot? She lived on the walls of the city. And the spies entered her house and went. Alright? New Testament stories in Jericho.
Oh. Is Nehemiah one of the old ones?
Who?
Nehemiah, one of the old ones? Or no?
No, we have Prophet Elisha with the axe that floated, the iron axe floated on the springs. Yes. The school of the prophets. Elisha. Until today there's a spring called Elisha Spring here. Other stories, New Testament. Let's go in New Testament.
New.
Remember blind Bartimaeus?
Yeah.
He cried out, Son of David, heal me. Okay. Remember other stories? Zacchaeus, the tax collector. Yeah. So we're coming to a checkpoint. We're coming to area A, Palestinian.